The story of Rolex, the luxurious and prestigious brand currently valued at approximately $8 billion, begins a century ago with an orphan teenager and a stolen inheritance. This boy, deprived of his inheritance, faced adversity with unwavering determination. He escaped his hometown and, after years of relentless work, decided to pursue his passion, giving rise to a legendary watchmaking business. Our protagonist, Hans Wilsdorf, born on March 22, 1881, in Kumbak, Germany. Coming from a family whose economic situation was in the middle class, Hans experienced tragedy with the loss of his mother in 1892 and, a year later, the death of his father, leaving him orphaned at the age of 12. Under the guardianship of his uncle, who sold the prosperous family business to finance the education of the three siblings, Hans and his brothers were sent to a distinguished boarding school called Ernestonem Coburg in Bavaria, Germany. Although Hans initially resisted this decision and sank into sadness as he was perceived as an outsider in his new environment, he eventually recognized that his uncle's choice played a crucial role in his future success. The early autonomy instilled by his uncles led him to develop habits of care and reflection on his possessions, fundamental elements for his later success. Despite the initial challenges, Hans excelled academically, especially in mathematics and languages, where he mastered French and English. His innate desire to explore the world and the importance of languages would prove to be essential elements in his career. During his school years, he befriended a Swiss classmate who shared fascinating stories about Le Chaux de Fonds, a Swiss city renowned for its distinguished history in the watchmaking industry. This tale ignited Hans's curiosity about the place. At the age of 19, eager to escape his routine, Hans left the boarding school in Germany and moved to Geneva, Switzerland. He found employment as an apprentice in a prestigious international pearl export company. Although the company generated considerable profits without creating anything tangible, Hans immersed himself in business tactics, accumulating knowledge and capital for his youth. His trajectory took a crucial turn when he received an offer to join Kuno, a prominent watchmaking company that exported $1 million Swiss francs worth of high-quality watches each year. Despite his previous position being more lucrative, Hans's fascination with Le Chaux de Fonds and the watchmaking industry motivated him to move in 1900 to work for this company. His role as a correspondent and English-speaking employee, thanks to his language skills acquired in school, earned him a monthly salary of 80 Swiss francs. Additionally, he was responsible for winding hundreds of pocket watches daily and checking their accuracy, gaining profound knowledge of watchmaking throughout different eras. Though was interrupted in his trajectory, forced to return to Germany and serve in the army after only 2 years at Kuno. After his service at the age of 22, he moved to London, England, to collaborate with another high-quality watchmaking company. There, he took on a more prominent role and was responsible for increasing sales during the 2 years he stayed. He succeeded in attracting more customers and increasing sales over time. During this period, he also met his future wife, Florence Frances May Crotty, whom he would marry shortly after. One day, while Hans was chatting outside with his older brother-in-law, Alfred James Davis, about life and future plans, he expressed his confidence in opening his own watch business. He just needed some capital. Despite being young, Alfred, aware of Hans's passion for watches, took a risk and offered his financial support. Thus, in 1905, they founded Wilsdorf and Davis Limited, which would eventually become Rolex. A few years later, they partnered with the Swiss watch company Hermann Egler, established in Switzerland, and imported movements from that country to England, assembling them in watch cases. They also opened an office in Switzerland to strengthen their partnership. Soon, they specialized in distributing watches at affordable prices. Despite his love for watches, Hans found something unfavorable in the watch industry of the time: pocket watches. At that time, wristwatches were predominantly worn by women as jewelry, and some looked down on them for their lack of precision. Hans, however, found pocket watches inconvenient, especially when his hands were busy. He believed it was possible to create the perfect wristwatch that would constantly show the exact time and be suitable for everyday use. In 1914, Hans Wilsdorf predicted that wristwatches would completely replace pocket watches. Committed to this vision, he spent the next years traveling throughout Europe, meeting with numerous watchmakers to discuss the smallest details of watches. By 1908, his company was already one of the leading ones in the English watch industry. Now, Hans wanted to change the name of his company to something of high quality, catchy, and easy to pronounce in any language. It also had to be brief to easily fit on the watch dial. After much consideration, he combined 5 letters of the alphabet until the name Rolex finally emerged. He immediately knew it was perfect and a few days later registered the name as a trademark of Wilsdorf and Davis Limited in 1908. In the following years, Rolex earned recognition for its high-quality wristwatches, attracting numerous wealthy individuals who began to embrace the brand. This prestige was further solidified during World War I, a time when many companies, including watchmakers, struggled to survive, and some were even forced to close. However, this tragic period only contributed to the growing fame of Hans's company, thanks to the reliability of its wristwatches. During the conflict, soldiers were issued Rolex watches instead of traditional pocket watches, as they proved to be more practical and secure. The precision and the timekeeping of these watches facilitated the coordination of attacks. By 1914, the company had already experienced significant growth, employing 60 people and establishing expansive offices in London to enhance its credibility. Additionally, Rolex had obtained the first chronometer certification for a wristwatch from Switzerland, followed by a prestigious Class A precision certificate from the Kew Observatory in London, further solidifying public trust in the brand. Despite all these achievements, in 1914, Hans faced a challenge with the imposition of a 33% tax by the British on all businesses registered in Great Britain that exported products internationally. Faced with this, Hans relocated his company's headquarters from London to Switzerland to avoid these levies. The anti-German sentiment in Britain during the war also influenced this decision, as the name Hans Wilsdorf clearly indicated a German origin. To counter this, in 1915, he changed the company's name from Wilsdorf and Davis Limited to Rolex Watch Corporation Limited. In 1919, the corporation moved its main office from Bienne to Geneva, where it still resides today. Since then, Rolex focused on manufacturing watch movements in Bienne, transporting them to Geneva for verification and meticulous finishing. Hans Wilsdorf, along with his team, worked to improve the technical innovation of the wristwatch, seeking a case so tight that it ensured permanent protection of the movements against damage caused by dust, perspiration, water, heat, and cold. Thanks to Hans's patience and determination, these efforts paid off. In 1926, Rolex launched its revolutionary model that would transform the watch industry forever, the Oyster, the first waterproof wristwatch in history. This new design, sealed hermetically, provided optimal protection to the small internal movements, making it water-resistant. Hans recognized the magnitude of this innovation and waited for the perfect moment to creatively introduce it to the world. In 1927, he seized the opportunity when he heard about Mercedes Glutche, a London woman who claimed to be able to swim across the English Channel. Although initially met with skepticism, Hans encouraged her to wear a Rolex Oyster around her neck during a challenging swim. Despite not successfully completing the task, the Rolex Oyster emerged from the water in perfect condition. This experience generated great excitement among the public, and Hans capitalized on it through advertisements in the London newspaper Daily Mail, thus marking another milestone in Rolex's history. This is the moment when Rolex gained international renown as a revolutionary watch that raised high expectations. Hans also implemented the clever strategy of showcasing his Rolex Oyster in real fish tanks at the sailing exhibitions of every Rolex dealer. This tactic proved surprisingly effective, capturing people's attention as they walked by. The strategy continued to work astonishingly well, and people were fascinated with the products. Hans decided to intensify Rolex's advertising efforts, and in 1928, he collaborated with leading British companies. He worked with the prominent model of that time, Evelyn Lane, to promote their watches. Images of her wearing a Rolex wristwatch inside a fish tank became a key element in advertising. The advertising campaign did not stop there. In 1933, newspapers featured Rolex Oyster watches associated with a flight over Mount Everest. The crew members wearing their Rolexes were amazed to see that after the flight, their watches were still functioning at 100%. Another example was when the famous pilot Malcolm Campbell set a speed record by reaching 300 miles per hour with his Rolex in 1935. He requested permission to advertise it, and Malcolm accepted without charge. At that moment, Rolex began to be perceived not only as a high-quality watch but also as a technical, reliable timepiece suitable for everyday use. Marketing played a crucial role. In 1931, Rolex continued to captivate people by introducing its updated model, the Rolex Oyster Perpetual, the first waterproof and self-winding wristwatch. Although the previous model of the Rolex Oyster was a great achievement, the need for manual winding presented challenges due to its tight case. Hans faced the challenge and succeeded in creating an automatic watch, fulfilling a dream that people had been trying to perfect for centuries. Between 1934 and 1940, Hans also produced some high-quality watches outside the Rolex brand, registering them under his own name. However, this practice was discontinued due to the negative sentiment towards Germany in the French, British, and American markets. Despite his achievements, Hans struggled to make a name for himself in the market due to his German surname. With the outbreak of World War II, Rolex faced difficulties in exporting products outside of Switzerland to major European markets. Hans felt frustrated, and to make matters worse, his wife passed away in 1944. In her memory, he founded the Wilsdorf Foundation, a charitable organization. Shortly before his death, Hans transferred 100% ownership of Rolex to the foundation, which still owns and controls it to this day. After World War II, Rolex experienced significant growth. By 1946, they had already sold 50,000 certified Rolex chronometers, and by 1947, sales reached 100,000 chronometers, doubling the sales of the previous 2 decades in just 1 year. Their success was further bolstered by the launch in 1945 of the Rolex Datejust, the first automatic wristwatch that was water-resistant and displayed the date on the dial. During the 1950s, Rolex continued to introduce innovative watches, with the Rolex Submariner introduced in 1953 being the most legendary. It was the first waterproof wristwatch designed for deep-sea diving, capable of reaching depths of 100 meters in the ocean without malfunctioning. The death of Hans Wilsdorf in 1960 marked the beginning of Rolex's transition into the luxury brand it is today. The company focused its marketing on being an exclusive collection for high society. In 1985, Rolex started manufacturing its watches with 904L stainless steel, a durable and expensive material, becoming the first to do so. This contributed to its current high prices. Rolex remains the world's most recognized watch brand, and its legacy endures thanks to Hans Wilsdorf, a man who rose from obscurity and transformed the watch industry with his passion for design and technical innovation. His influence is reflected in every person who wears a Rolex. Thank you all for your attention. Be sure to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and until next time.